The problem is not to get the answer. You can get answered everything. But the problem is to find the right questions. You understand? You know, there's so many opportunities, so many possibilities out there. So what should I ask now?
Hello, and welcome to the Randall Osché Podcast, where we create a safe space for meaningful and thought-provoking conversations. We have long-form interviews with entrepreneurs, thought leaders, artists, and changemakers in order to deconstruct their journeys and to pass out valuable life lessons and life-changing perspectives for listeners like yourself, so that you can, as Randall says, learn their lessons without their scars. So whether you're tuning in on your daily commute or during a workout or cooking dinner, we are happy to have you join us. So take a seat, relax, grab a cup of tea, and join the conversation. Now, let's dive into this week's episode.
Thomas Tingstrup, welcome to the show. For those of the listeners who don't know you, won't you go ahead and take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Thomas Tingstrup, as you pronounce it. I'm from Denmark, but I've lived outside Denmark since 2009, where my wife and I to start up a project we call Tings, which is a hotel from where we get a chance to live out our dreams, or some of our dreams. I'm 62, and I have a background from finance. I educated financial world bank, went to marketing, business strategy, and been working in finance industry, consumer goods, entertainment, and web.
Excellent. Yeah, so it sounds like you have a bunch of things you like to get your hands into, right? Yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah. So my understanding from previous conversation, and I think this is a good place to start, is, and correct me if I'm wrong on the background here, but you and your wife were living in Denmark, had corporate careers, and then made the decision to give that up for a year and then travel around the world. Is that correct? Let's start there. How did that decision come about, right? How did you decide the corporate career life has served us well to this point, but we want these other experiences and opportunities, so let's pause for a year and travel? How did that decision happen?
Sometimes we ask ourselves the same question. I don't know where to start nor where to begin. I was an apprentice in a local banking company, not because I was interested in the financial world, but because the bank back then would finance your further education. So I applied for an internship, I think it's called. And the day I started, I also signed up for university, where I studied business strategy. After 3-4 years, I was promoted in the bank, started as a product manager, label manager, whatever we called it, in the marketing. So that was my first marketing experience I got there. After 3 weeks in a small book advertising agency, I was headhunted by Tuborg Brewery, because I have a past history in the brewery business. I was heading the board of a small unit where we had an interest in beer labels, beer culture, and because of my interest in beer and my marketing skills from the bank, he got me in as product manager, which is the largest beer in Denmark and was then the biggest marketing account. It's a brief, short story. I went on from there to the music industry, a career at a young executive program run by the CEO of Carlsberg. And he was together with the CEOs from pharmacy industry, Nestle, big banks, head of a program where they would promote and hire young future executives. And I was picked up, I think, 37 years old. I think it's a coincidence that another of my interests is music. And back then, it was in 1985. That was where big money came into the music industry. And Mercury Records, the biggest record company back then, was bought up by EMI Records. And all the big money came into the industry, so they were looking for somebody who could run the big budgets, television advertising. This key account managers was introduced to the music business as well. So they headhunted me. I was back then in Nestle in Brazil. Headhunter called me again and again and again. He didn't want to say what job it was, but eventually he said he knew that I would love the job. And I went to Denmark. He told me that the legends in the Danish music industry that wanted me, because I had seen me at concerts as music sponsors. Tuborg was the biggest sponsor of the biggest music events in Scandinavia, Roskilde Festival. So they knew me. And of course I said yes. Many of my friends said it was the worst career I could do, but I always follow my interest. I worked there for 5-6 years. And all the jobs I've had, I worked 80 hours, 100 hours per week. The problem with the music industry is that you cannot control the product. You can't tell some York from Radiohead to make a hit or Pink Floyd to come with a new album. So there are some limitations on what you can gain intellectually or business-wise. So after 5 years, I said, sorry, I've been there, done that, and we really didn't know what to do. Then a friend of mine, who is now the head of the leading advertising agency in Denmark, we have been playing around doing some of the most stupid advertising communication campaigns in Danish consumer good market. And I was on his back all the time because back then they didn't get any money for the creative ideas. They got money from television advertising and they got money from printing papers. And already then I was an Napster generation. I was very, very focused on all the PR things. What the main tool you have in the music industry, that's public relations, because you have all the arts. So we were playing with the concept of doing a different setup in the advertising world where you somehow got creative rights, like you have the musical rights to your music, and kind of used the different creative ideas on various platforms such as books, movies, merchandise, etc., etc. And his partner or his boss suggested we started up a business concept, made a business plan for starting up that kind of an agency that covered all these fields in communication. And once we were ready to kick off, my wife and I was discussing our life. She was then vice president for Carlsberg Worldwide in marketing. So she had 200 travel days per year and we were exhausted. So we said, sorry, if I'm going to do this, I will spend another 5-6 years with 100 hours per week. And we said, I don't mind doing that, but I need a break. So we decided to just skip our jobs. And before signing the contract, I said, I would love to sign this contract for the new company, but I just take a year off and take my backpack and go traveling, which I think pissed off some of the people that was involved in the process. But at the same time, they understood and said, okay, come by when you come back and let's take it from there. So that was when we wanted to just do something else. Because we have been working. Denmark is a small country, so whether you work in music or you work in fast food, consumer good, you meet the same people, same media, it's the same. So we need inspiration, so we just left. Yeah. It took us a year to make the planning. You just don't leave for a year without doing some planning. It took us 6 months, and then we put on our backpacks. We wanted to go to India for the picnic, but ended up in Japan. And from there, we just went on and on.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So 6 months to plan. How old were you when you made the decision to take the year off?
I was 38.
So it took 6 months to plan, and then the initial plan.
Because you have your partner, you have your financial obligation. Right. The son, I have to, get him involved with projects as well, so he could join us around the world.
So how old was your son at the time?
He was 14.
Did you and Annette take your son with you?
He stayed with his mom. Annette had a lot of business points, bonus points, so she flew out.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, met us in Indonesia, met us different parts of the world. Followed us because I was blogging back then, so he could follow travels.
Yeah. So what were some of the highlights of that year when you were traveling?
Freedom.
The freedom.
Yeah. To say, I don't know, to look at a map in Quito in Ecuador, or look at a map in the post office where we're sending shopping back to Scandinavia, looking around, take down cruise with the Indian boats down to Rio Amazonas and go to Iquitos. Just do whatever you feel like doing. I had read somewhere in National Geographic that you could follow the oil riggers who was digging oil in the Amazon jungle and go to their oil riggers, and from there continue with Indian boats to another village and eventually reach Iquitos, which back then was the largest city, only accessible by riverside, the largest city in the world, 1 million people. And I have read about the Iron House. I wanted to sit in the regal bar there. So we did it and got flown out by the military because of political instability. And it's just two things you dream of, which you were not capable of doing the first months of our travel, but because you get more and more experience and know how your way around, which is, that was the freedom.
And then that, as far as the traveling, you got more and more comfortable doing more and more adventurous things.
You get more and more curious because the more you know, the less you really know, because it opens up other insights and other questions. The freedom to choose, the freedom to get involved. It's hard to explain to people that doesn't know. You find out there's a layer around the world of a traveling community that somehow, no matter where they are, they meet eventually. We met online. There was already then communities where you could communicate, or you could ask questions about, is it possible to cross this border? What about the political situation? Because you can't rely on the newspapers. They have only one issue, that's to sell newspapers. So you have to find other ways. So yeah, it gets in your blood.
Yeah.
Meet other people. You see things you didn't know existed. And sometimes we just met people and said, oh, I wish we could stay here and do something or get involved or exploit this analysis into design, fabrics and precious stones. All these possibilities you could do. And then at what point, I don't know, after 4, 5, 6 months, you're going through 3 phases. I think it's 7 days, 7 weeks, and 7 months where you get stressed because you forget to have holidays. It's hard work to travel. Suddenly you've been traveling for 3 months without a break, and then you somehow get mental.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of learning about yourself and what you're capable of doing and how big the world is, how nice people are, all the fears you read about different communities or religions or countries. And there's 2 different kind of worlds. The worlds you see in the media and the worlds you see when you go on the road. So basically, that was the biggest gift by traveling, meeting people and freedom.
Yeah, I would agree with you 1,000%. I don't think a lot of people recognize this, but the media isn't there to inform you. They're for-profit organizations. So like you said, the only thing they're interested in is selling the story. And as long as they're getting revenue from selling the story, they're going to tell you what sells, not what is meant to best inform you. So if anybody's listening to this, truth to power that the media doesn't have your best interest in mind. They just want to make money. And you should recognize that.
True. I'll get people to click on that.
Yeah. Clicks, watch time, that's all they care about. It's not meant to inform the population, whatever country you're in. They're meant to get revenue dollars.
Exactly.
So what happened after that year of travel? Did you go back to Denmark, back to your corporate jobs?
My plan was to go back to the project I started out.
Okay.
Annette, she hadn't any plans at all. She quit her job. She was in a different situation because she was vice president. She had to leave. It was very frightening. Instead of returning directly to Denmark, we had to stop over some days in Berlin where we were just taking and found ourselves in a local bar, sitting there, take a deep breath and look each other's eyes and say, what now? Because it was a frightening experience getting back. But we went back. During those days in Berlin, we promised each other never get caught in the hamster wheel again. We promised each other to make some kind of a setup that made it possible for us to live, I don't know how to say it, to live outside Denmark doing something where we could both get involved in our own interests, my interest and Annette's interest, and at the same time, she would get some of the young boys and girls involved in the project so we could support them in their education. We have missed so many young boys and girls on the road in the various countries. And they had so much time that is wasted only because they're smart. The smartest kids, they go to the road and sell cold drinks to tourists or guide them around, while their more stupid brothers and sisters, they go to school. The smart kids have to make money for the family. We want to see if we could get them involved in some kind of business, which turned out to be a hotel, and let them run the business. We could teach them. We are very good at teaching. We are very good at discovering talent and get them started up and give them responsibility. And once the business is up and running, go to another place, start up the same business, and then you have a list of a number of small businesses where the money, the profit goes back to the education. Understand? So that I call it some self-sustainable charity. I hate the word charity. Yeah. Starting up business on commercial terms, that's what we're good at. We're business people, both of us, business strategists, so we can look at Excels. And the whole idea was to be 100% focused on profit. The money we make, we use on their educations or their kids' educations or whatever they need to get a decent life. And that became a hotel. The first hotel we made a business plan. We promised to realize that business plan before I was 50 years old, which was that would be in 2012. Back then it was 2002. It was just after 9/11 we had returned. So that business plan or that business idea we got in Berlin, and that was the one we wanted to work on and execute. So my 50 years birthday would be celebrated outside Denmark. We didn't know where, we didn't know how and what. The only thing we knew about was hotels, where we knew we could get kids involved, because everyone, basically it's about treating people nicely. And we have these big cultures, especially in developing countries, their social network are the family. And they're used to treat people nicely. They're used to big company. They look after each other. They're used to have 20 people staying together. So use their skills they have developed through this social life, use them for a hotel with international guests. That was the idea we had, which we then developed the following year after returning from our around the world trip. We arrived and I had nothing to do, and it had nothing to do. So first we had to make ourselves a living so we could get a life, get some money in, and beside our jobs, work on our business. So I don't know. I was sitting the first 6 months when we returned depressed, looking at my face in the mirror and said, what now? Annette, she was more focused. She got involved in her own things and did her yoga thing and did whatever she felt like and got involved in strategic planning, but with the communication.
Yeah. I have a lot of follow-up questions there. First, I did some research. I was looking at your LinkedIn profile. Your birthday is September 14th. So is mine.
Seriously?
Yeah, September 14th. Yeah. A bunch of questions from there, but I guess I want to back up a moment. So like when you were traveling, I'm assuming that the places you stayed in influenced the type of hotels that you operated and continue to operate today. What kind of accommodations did you like to stay in, or did you seek out when you were traveling?
The way we traveled was we could not be picky. But most of the places we had to stay where we could stay. So we stayed in all kinds of dorms, private hotels, business hotels, hostels, wherever you could get a bed.
Yeah.
When you travel for a year, you have a budget. We are not rich. We had to get some money out of our property to finance our travels. So we had a very limited budget, but we stayed in all kinds of accommodation. But the hotel we have, I can't say we did not have the accommodation we stayed in during our year travel as not that kind of hotel we wanted to make. It's more inspired by our life as business travelers. Because in our previous careers in the music business or in the brewery business or other business, we have traveled a lot on business travels. And every time we got a chance to combine business travel with our private travel, if for instance, Annette, if she went to Vietnam, I went out, I was in Asia, so I went up and joined her. And I stayed at her 5-star corporate hotel. And as soon as she was finished, we went to a more modest place. And the reason why I mentioned Vietnam was that we got the real idea in this modest place in Hanoi. And that was 97, first time, 97, 98, 99. That was the first time we got an idea about starting a hotel because we were chilling on the terrace. Do you know Hanoi?
No.
It has a big lake. It was before it really opened for travelers. And we were staying on this rooftop after reading a book and chilling. We said, I would love that my friend was a DJing here and Annette has some idea about decorating it because it has so much potential. And we actually tried to buy it with the help of the Danish embassy. But it was too early. Back then it was only TWA that had a business in Western outside Vietnam. That was the only Western company that has business going on there. So it was too early. So when we dropped that idea, we just said, okay, that was when we really said, let's do something, let's go away. So those hotels, we found out that we are not the only corporate people who wanted more modest places. If you look at corporate hotels, I give you an example. When we traveled between Kathmandu and Europe, we always stopped over in Istanbul. And one day we were didn't want to go to downtown Istanbul. We had this 5-star hotel, big, super luxury hotel just outside Istanbul airport. And we went there for the night. And I took a picture walking. We bought this suite because we were exhausted. I took a picture walking down the corridor and it looked like a surrealistic movie by Beatles from the 70s. You have all these doors to the same side. And then we came down for breakfast. I said to Annette, look at people here. They are Hindus, they are Christians, they are gay, they are lesbians, they are, everybody's different. And still all the rooms are the same. It's only the amenities that varies and the prices. That's the only industry where you don't do something like, can you imagine the same in fashion?
Yeah.
So that was when we knew that we have to make something where it doesn't really matter how the rooms are. It's the vibe that actually has to appeal to a certain group of people. And that's what we call the free individual independent travelers, which are both business people, but it can be musicians and it can be vagabonds. They share the same feel, the same vibe. So that was the idea. And then we had to define the vibe and define the brand platform and stuff like that. But that was where we got the idea of what kind of hotel we would make. It had nothing to do with the hotels we stayed as during our travels. But there was one, of course, you stay in a lot of hotels. So of course, there are 1 or 2 hotels that inspires you. But that was also a hotel from our previous travels and my own travels, or our own travels independently.
Yeah. So we're going to circle back to this, but I don't want to get too much further before I bring this up. So I guess just a short recap. You were caught up in the hamster wheel, decided to take a year off, go backpacking with your wife. And then during that year, you enjoyed it, you had freedom. And then after that year is wrapping up, you had made a determination we needed to do something else by the time you turned 50 so we can continue to live out our dreams, right? Live our best lives, right? And then part of sort of that thought process was you landed on a hotel because you had experience traveling and you knew that there was a traveling community that appreciated a different style of accommodations than maybe a corporation would pay for, or like large corporate hotels. But the other aspect of this that's part of your business model was that you and Annette are building the business plan, executing on the business plan, coming up with the inspiration and creative ideas, but you wanted to give an occupation to the intelligent, young women and men that you met along the way that were out hustling, selling Coca-Colas, selling water, that you knew that they had talent more than what they were doing to support their families. So I just wanted to circle back and spend some time on that a little bit. My first question is, I think I have an entrepreneurial spirit. And when I see young people out with a lemonade stand, or I used to have a long commute, and part of my commute one time, it was like bumper to bumper traffic, like driving through a part of the city. So it was, you'd be stopped at a red light, and then you would go 20 feet, stop at a red light. And occasionally this little girl that was selling lemonade or whatever. So every time I saw her, as long as I stopped at the right place, I would always try to give her cash for whatever she was selling, because I didn't necessarily want the lemonade, but I wanted to support her and her entrepreneurial endeavors. And I think it's really important to help young people along the way when they're showing those sorts of characteristics. What about you and your journeys and coming up with this business plan and recognizing that these intelligent young women and men were out there hustling to make a living for themselves and their family? How did you connect the dots there?
Yeah, it's a good question, because first we had to identify where to start. We had a list of 10 countries where we said, okay, nice to do something here or there. And on that list, we had Cambodia, we had Vietnam, we had Laos, we had Indonesia, we had South American countries. So we asked around in the Danish charity organizations and presented our ideas to ask people's opinion about if we have this vision or if we have this project, where would they suggest us to go and start off. We got 3, I think it was 2 or 3 countries, and we went on a research trip back to these countries. One of them was Cambodia, and we found out that it was already too late back then. And the other one was Nepal. And during that research, it's a little bit strange, because back then we got a wrong name for the kids we wanted to involve. We called them street kids. The street kids in Nepal are completely different. Those are the ones that are sniffing glue in Tamil and are begging. You can't do anything with them because they are lost already. So we had to find other ways to get in touch with these young boys. You can't just go and take families, young boys and girls. You can't do that. So we went there, and we got some relations to the Buddhist circles, refugee camps. We had some contacts through people that are running orphanages. And slowly we got contacts to different communities. You apply for people, you have to get some of the boys and girls that has some talent within the disciplines you need to get covered. So that was basically what we did. And then we interviewed them like you would do. We used all the same tools you would do in a corporate business in Europe. And once we got them in, if it was a manager, we of course started to train them as managers, and we had to get through, I think we had 2 girls before we finally got the manager. We did the same programs that you would do with staff. So we do staff interviews, we do career talking, we give bonuses, and eventually the manager, she became partner. And if it wasn't because of COVID, she would actually run the place, and we only was left behind with 20% just to get involved. All these tools you use from the world we know, we use just in different ways. You cannot talk about careers for kids that never had any. So we talked about their dreams.
Yeah.
And even that was complicated. Some of the boys and girls we got involved were so miserable, they didn't even know the concept of dreams. But after they have stayed with us for a while, some of them came back and said, I would like to do this and that. And then we helped them doing this and that. It's not about sending them to school. Somebody who may have other interests or talents that doesn't go the academic direction. But we did the same, did the research. Where do we find the kids in Denmark or in Europe? You have these online platforms where you can go talent. You don't have that here. But you have this group of people in different circles, like orphanages, organizations, camps, and then you just go and find them there.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I find this, perspective matters, right? And I think if you haven't traveled the world and you're from a developed country, I don't think that you quite can grasp how the rest of the world works or how it works in developed countries, right? Or undeveloped countries, or even in developed countries, like how different socioeconomic status of people live. Not everybody has the same opportunity to education and these benefits that are out there. So like, I imagine for a lot of those kids, like you said, they didn't know of career, they didn't know of dreams. So you had to develop dreams in some of them and tell them that. I imagine some of those conversations were about you can do more with this life than just selling Coca-Cola or just doing what maybe your parents do. Like, how did you cultivate that in them to think bigger? There's more for you out there than this, and we can help you get there, and we're more than willing to help you get there.
I don't know what to say because, how should I put it? We are there. So after we have an idea about what he and she wants to do or dream of doing or what their talents are, we just start up. We are involved. A lot of people that are working with these worlds, they are not there. They come with a 2-year contract. It takes them 6 months to get some idea about where they are, and the 1 year to finally get involved, and then they have 6 months left before they go to another contract. And none of them wants to make mistakes because they are always on the hunt for a higher position in a better country. But we are there all the time. So we show by doing. We tell them that's how we want it, and try to explain it. I have a situation. I like walking barefoot. In some cultures, like Nepal, you only walk barefoot inside the house. But we had a beautiful garden, and I walked barefoot. And our back then head chef, which was the young boy that followed the house we leased, he was a boy who turned on the water and turned on the electricity so his rich family could get their flushing toilet and showers and electrical light turned on. He came after me and said, "Sorry, you cannot walk barefoot." I had to explain him that, "Jeet, sorry, this is my home. That is how we do. So please respect that." He understood. Then only one day we had an emergency. I had to do something for the kitchen, and there was a small vegetable shop around the corner, and I had to run. So I ran out in the street. Then he got angry because it's only Dalit, which are, the caste system. These are below the caste system. The girls are born to prostitutions, and the boys, they inherit the whole family's death. Then he got angry, and I had to respect that. So it's like a mutual understanding of where one's limits are. Sometimes you can explain it just by doing or telling. Sometimes you have to spend a little more time and go back to Adam and Eve and explain why it's like that. It works the other way. Sometimes we had workers, they disappeared. And then, why didn't you come yesterday or the day before? They had ghosts in the house, which means that they have to be in the house together with the priest so they could clean the house. And I said, "Sorry, they didn't teach me that in high school." So it's not like we have a human resource manual.
Yeah.
We have to improvise along the way, and it's quite easy. At least the only thing I say, don't complicate things, because you cannot plan, because there's so many layers that these cultures we have been involved with, you don't know about, and when you know it, you don't necessarily understand it. Keep responsibility and encourage people to make mistakes. That's the only way you learn it.
A lot of people say encourage people to make mistakes, but I also think it's about creating a culture where making mistakes is acceptable, right? I don't want to say something cliche like celebrating mistakes, but it's one thing to say it, but it's another to have a culture where people are actually allowed to make mistakes.
We have a cost in our budgets. It's called education money.
Yeah.
Don't make the mistakes twice, then it's stupid.
Yeah.
Example, if you make something in the kitchen in a poor country like Nepal, say make a pancake wrong or pasta not al dente, the only way you can teach them how to make al dente pasta is to take it, try to eat them and throw it away. That's the worst thing you can do in a poor country, but you have to make sure that they don't sell it again. So once they have been throwing it away, they never repeat the same mistake.
Yeah. I always say that there's always a cost of education, and sometimes that's monetary, sometimes that's throwing food away, but there's always a cost of education. I like it that you have that as a part of your budget. So let's fast forward. You currently own and operate Tings Hotel in Lisbon and just reopened your restaurant in the hotel. So congratulations on that. But tell me a little bit about how the Lisbon Hotel came to be.
Part of our business model is that we spend 1 year starting up the hotel. If we cannot get away and leave it to the kids within 12 months, we close it. So after 10 months, we went to Bangkok and were just sitting in the hotel room waiting for Tings Hotels to call us if we had problems. And they managed to handle the hotel without our presence. And then we went to Myanmar to try starting up there. Actually had two contracts. We leased a house. We had 2 contracts we lost. That was when Myanmar opened for Western countries to come and do business. So the real estate market exploded, which meant it was impossible to do the business we wanted with a number of room and make a profit. So we gave up. And back then, we have lost 2 years We had a setback in Kathmandu because of the earthquake that kept us getting Kathmandu back in shape. And we had to sit and rethink everything. And I heard the radio about the aftermath of the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, how the impact was on the youth generation, the young generation in Southern Europe. I think the unemployment rates are like above 50% in Greece, Italy, and Lisbon, Portugal. So I said, why don't we go and see if we can do something? These young boys and girls, I mean, here you don't have any charity organization or NGOs to get involved. So that was basically the idea we got to go. And we went to check it out, and then we started up here. You know, when we come to a new country, we have a very important part of our platform, business platform, is to find the right location. And it's in walking distance from downtown in a local neighborhood. So we have our business plan. So first we go and see if we can find kind of place in the cities we want to start up. We did that in Yangon, we did that in Nepal. And in Lisbon, it turned out that it was quite easy. There was some interesting neighborhoods where we could do something. And we managed to get a house, and then it just started up again. I don't know what else. We did some mistakes. We have a history in Lisbon because we have traveled here for 30 years. The first time we've been here together was 30 years ago. So we thought we knew Lisbon. And that's a big, big problem. Because once you think you know things, you get weak in your research. Because if we have done some research here, we would have known that the young boys and girls we wanted to get involved, they are not in the country. 20% of the people born here live outside Portugal. That's all the young boys and girls. Those who want to get involved. Those left behind, they are either too stoned or they sit disappointed. They try to make it outside Portugal and are disappointed, or they never got the energy to leave. So we spent 1 year here trying to get people involved, which turned out to be impossible. And in order not to lose money, we had to widen our scope and just get talented. There was a lot of boys and girls from the old Eastern European countries. We got an oldest manager, and we're not stupid. We're not in a situation where we can lose money. So we just tried to get it started. That's when we started Lisbon. And the background was because of the unemployment rates amongst the young generations.
Let's take a quick break from today's episode. If you are enjoying the conversation, please take a moment to look us up. You can find Randall on Instagram at Randall Osché. That's spelled at RANDALLOSCHE. And you can catch the show notes and other resources at randallosché.com. And now back to the episode.
There's one thing we haven't talked about. One of the dreams we wanted to do was to create this platform where we could both get our own interests out in the world. Annette does Kashmir, she does all these things. I have been involved in a lot of startup projects. I started up Kathmandu Startup Weekend. We do art exhibitions. Part of our involvement are non-commercial. So when we get involved with artists and art projects or culture projects, we use our connections from entertainment to do web talk, web seminars, script writing workshops. If we have an exhibition, we pay for the marketing, we pay for the opening, and we don't charge commission from the sales and stuff like that. It's very, very important because you can actually contribute to the local culture in other ways by giving money or by your time and your network.
So the art exhibitions, you'll host them, put them on, pay for the expense to exhibit local artists, maybe not local, but like artists.
We try to get them. We have had a few Nepali artists doing exhibitions in Europe through our contacts and our network, because there's so much talent out there that never get a chance to go out because the NGOs, I don't want to sound negative about this, but because you work in an NGO does not necessarily qualify you to deal with art and culture. You understand?
Yeah.
They have a different background. We happen to be involved in music. We happen to have a lot of artist friends. We happen to have a lot of chefs in our network. So besides giving salary, we can send Teach, which ended up being our head chef. We could send him to work in a Michelin restaurant in Denmark. Usually if you come to Nepal, you get a chance to do the dishwashing, but actually get involved in the service or catering or whatever. That is another way you can actually contribute to the education or develop their skills. It's just a very important part of the platform we have created. That's to, getting involved where you can get involved.
I think the part that resonates with me about that is that you're taking what you're good at and what interests you and figuring out how you can contribute to the greater good of people in society by leveraging your skill set and your interests, right? You're doing it your way. And I think if, anybody's listening to this, you don't have to be an NGO. You don't have to go to school to have a special education to contribute to others. You just, find something you're good at, find something you're interested in, and reach out and try to help people as best you can.
And one more thing, you have to have something on stake. I mean, before we even got a chance to do the first strategic thoughts on paper with our plan, we tried to see if we could apply for a CEO job in one of the big international organizations, NGOs. We wanted to contribute for free. They didn't want to interview us. I mean, we had pretty good CV working internationally, but my word is none of the people who work in NGOs have anything on stake. They get a good salary, they get to drive it, And it's very, very important that you have to have something on stake. That's the only way you get an insight. Because if you lose money, then you lose your project.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's how you use your experience without sharing it with somebody. Just a basic foundation has to work. There's nothing wrong about being commercial. It depends on how you use your money.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. I have a bunch of questions I want to ask you about the hotel, if that's okay. So I was looking at the hotel in Lisbon, and a couple of things I found really intriguing. One, I hope to stay there someday because it is the type of place that I would enjoy staying at. But you don't have any televisions in your room because that's not what you appreciate about hotels, right? And this is your vision for how you would like to travel for your group of people. But you also have a common kitchen. And I love to cook. And one of the things I love about traveling is the ability to go to a local market, find ingredients, and then cook those ingredients. But a lot of places that you stay at don't have the opportunity to cook, right? Unless you get maybe an Airbnb or something like that. But most hotels don't offer, a kitchen for you to cook in. So tell me a little bit about the common kitchen idea and maybe where that came from.
Then we have to go one step back. Because if you look at our business plan, I think our business plan is actually on LinkedIn. So you can see there's a definition of our target group, which we have defined as a free, independent, and individual traveler. They are usually travel for a longer period of time, or they are on some kind of a project or through the business, or they could be script writers. They are on the road. And if you have been on the road for a longer period, you're set up looking at me. You get it? And as you say,
yes.
If you're desperate, especially if you like cooking, you go to the market. There's nothing as frustrating as seeing tomato and you can't do anything with it because you don't have a sharp knife. That's why we have a common kitchen. If we have stayed in Airbnb when we started up, we've stayed in Airbnb. Most Airbnbs, you have to make some decision before you make your meal. Because either you boil the pasta or you make your meat sauce. Because there's only one pot. So it's absolutely useless. So, at least we could provide some facilities where people like ourselves and the target people we want to stay with us, they have an opportunity. And it's not everybody that uses it, but those who do use it, they love it. Yep. And they love that we say, okay, come down and have some oil, or come and have some salt and pepper or some garlic, because it doesn't cost us anything.
Yeah. And it provides a great experience too, right? How much does a little salt or spices or olive oil cost you? It's pennies. Yeah.
No, think about how much money you use on advertising. This is part of our advertising.
Right.
Same goes with we have a guitar. People can play a guitar if they want to, because some of the musicians, they sit and compose on the computer. They need to have some sound. So we have music sessions every January or February. And suddenly somebody wanted a guitar to give some acoustic, give some real sound for a Sam. Then we bought one. And it's been part of the tools or elements you have a kitchen.
Yeah.
And the reason why we don't have a television, how often do you turn on television when you're in a hotel room? I do, because I want to get a confirmation that I'm right. Here in Portugal, it's only football, and then some church things, and then a selection of news station. Also, if you travel with your laptop or you refer to Netflix or whatever you have as a content provider on your entertainment channels.
Same. I haven't traveled a ton, but the places I have traveled to, I have turned on the TV, but it's all in the other country's language. And I only speak English. I know a little bit of Portuguese now, but that's not helping me out because it's all in the other language. I also read that at the hotel, there's a homemade bread for breakfast. So who does the homemade bread?
We do. I made my own bread since I was 14.
Yeah.
And no matter why you're on this planet, you get flour. And you say, what about India? They use flour for the pasta, they use flour for their momos or their rotis. So you can get flour. And then you get yeast, and then it's just make dough. And in Nepal, we made the dough early morning because they're up doing the pujas at 5 a.m., which means we don't make the bread from scratch. In Portugal, it's impossible to get people up at 5 in the morning. So I made it where you have a very wet dough. You prepare the 24 hours before and bake the following morning. And now we do bagels, and now we do rye bread as well. And because in our platform, We have two very, very important elements. One is the smell. Nobody works with the fragrance in a hotel. Nobody thinks about it. You think about what you, believe it or not, I think there's some people do something about they put on the wall. They think about all the visual part, but waking up to the smell of home-baked bread gives something you can't buy. It costs nothing. I make a bread for 25 cents. Euro cents.
Yeah, and people love the smell. It's like the smell of fresh coffee and bread in the morning.
True.
Right.
And we don't have this huge selection of items. Because if you go to a hotel and you look around, a lot of hotels here, they have 12, 15 rooms because of the regulations here. You can open a hotel with less than 10 rooms overnight, where it takes forever to get licensed to run a place with 17. But the small hotels, you still have a selection of flavors. You have 10 different kinds of cheeses. And you have, it doesn't lie. You can't eat it. And you know what happened? They pack it down and serve it the following days. We have one good slice of ham, one good slice of sausages, and we change it every day, and that's what you get. And then you get a homemade egg. How often do you get a homemade egg choice, or coffee in its choice, orange juice? There's a limit of how much food people can eat.
Yeah, I've mentioned this on a lot of other podcasts and but one of my favorite quotes is, too many options makes tyrants out of us all. And I think that's too many menu options, too many options in life. Who doesn't love looking at a large selection of different, pastries and breads and cheeses, but you don't need it, right? You don't need all of that. And it just makes everything more cumbersome.
You have to look at the guest that stays with you and say, okay, they have different traditions. Like I told you before, when you go to these 5-star hotels and look down the corridor and you go down and see who the guests are, it's the same here. If you come from Spain, one of their preferred breakfast, that's a toast with grated tomato and good olive oil.
Yeah.
Then they want a sweet thing. Somebody wants eggs, somebody doesn't want anything at all. So it takes so little to make a lot of people happy.
I think there's somewhere on maybe your LinkedIn that you said something like, you can't please everybody and you're not interested in pleasing everybody.
No, we're not. We can't and we won't. We have had situations where we have people entering the door where we say to each other, the good thing about me and Annette, we don't have to communicate. We know exactly the basic decisions we agree on without communicating. And we had a situation where we had somebody entering the gate in Kathmandu and we looked at each other, sorry, this is wrong. You could see for the person, he didn't belong here. So we told him that why don't we pay you the first night in this hotel further down the road? Because when you only have 17 rooms, one very negative guest can spoil the whole ambience you try to create. So we don't care about the negative reviews. Of course we care.
Yeah.
But it's not like we compromise on our beliefs because we're afraid of having. We don't care at all.
Yeah.
It's better to take the problems up front than it is to take them inside and let them grow to a disaster.
The thing that I read that you had written is, you say that you can't and you don't want to please all travelers. And that's just what we talked about. And from a business perspective, I used to manage financial advisors. One of the things I always told the financial advisors was that one bad client precludes you from having another good client, right? So one bad traveler, one bad guest prevents you from giving somebody else a great experience because it takes up that spot, right? It's a very one-for-one exchange. So you just reopened the restaurant at the hotel. As a restaurant person myself, tell me a little bit about what the menu is, what your inspiration.
We have a definition where we do dishes from all over the world, non-local dishes from all over the world made from local ingredients. That's our claim. And then today you have to have a menu that respects vegetarians, vegan, stuff like that. We don't make any specific, like I said, we have a vegetarian restaurant. We do items we know from our travels and items we can make from available ingredients and within a price range we know our guests will afford. So right now we have an Asian satay, Indonesian satays with peanut butter sauce and our own pickled vegetables. We have a small Asian omelets with mushrooms, with soy oyster sauce. We have, momos, Nepali Indian momos. When you travel in Nepal, you have momos, just like more dumplings. And one of our favorite momos, koche, basically momos you fry so they get crispy with tofu and herbs inside. That's something we make because you have it everywhere. It costs us nothing to make and you can prepare them and everybody likes it. So we have the Asian taste and then we make traditional classics. We miss ourselves. Caesar salad, you can't get a decent Caesar salad. Yeah, and actually in a lot of other countries, they destroy it with a lot of other items that has nothing to do with Caesar salad. We make our own mayonnaise. We make my own take on a vitello tonato where I use wheel tongue instead of wheel. And the tomato sauce, we add a little bit of wasabi to give it a special flair. Things where we can make our own touch with available things. and a menu that can be on one page, because you have to respect the routines in the kitchen and make sure that things work in the fridge and the logistics. So that's kind of menu we're working on now. And then we have made brownies and bagels. Nobody makes a bagel sandwich here with salmon and Philadelphia cream cheese. Up like that. Things not complicated.
Yeah, I like that. We'll work on wrapping this up. I respect your time. Really appreciate the conversation so far. But I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Then I want to talk about the hotel a little bit more. But what's the most influential book you've ever read?
Well, I always say I like Simone de Beauvoir's To the Mortal Motel. All men are mortal. I think it's in English.
All the men are mortal.
Yeah, I like that book a lot. Right now, I'm reading the Norwegian Karl Ove Knausgård, his autobiography series, his 6 books. Tolstoy, I like Tolstoy. I read. I don't watch television. I read.
Yeah.
Read. I never had a television since I left home when I was 14. So I know if we read Michael Porter's Business Advantages, 5 Forces. It's one of my Bibles from my marketing studies. Yeah. Michael Porter's Competitive Advantage. I have a lot of books.
The most influential book I've ever read is, because of this book, is how I frame this question, is How to Win Friends and Influence People. One, it's super informative, and it really teaches you how to be a good adult to me. It also introduced a lot of other historical figures, one of them being Theodore Roosevelt, former U.S. president. And it's just interesting reading about how, for me, the practices that these other people did to help them be successful in their lives. And reading that book really kickstarted my personal development journey to be where I'm at today. I don't typically reread books, but I'm rereading. There's an author, Peter Mayley, I think. He writes fiction books. He was an author that moved from the UK to the south of France.
I read his books as well.
Yeah. Have you read Hotel Pastiche?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. I like the first one better. I love both of them. But the first one, I can identify myself.
Yeah, I like his a lot. And then there's another, it's a nonfiction. It's written by Craig Carlson. And Craig Carlson moved from the United States to Paris. And he opened up a restaurant in Paris called Breakfast in America, because the only thing he missed about America was an American breakfast. So he loved Paris, loved France, but missed an American breakfast. So his book's called Pancakes in Paris, and it's about his journey to open up the restaurant. What one piece of advice would you give your younger self?
I can't really give my younger self an advice. If I should give advice, it should be my grandchildren. Because I think I can't really say I've done something I would regret, but I've done what I've done.
Yeah, let me reframe the question a little bit. When I ask that, I don't mean to be what do you regret, what would you have done better, but like through your journey so far, what's maybe one piece of advice or a couple pieces of advice that you wish you would have known sooner? Or, and you can think of it like, what advice would you give your grandchildren? What's the one piece of advice that you want to pass on from your life's journey to them?
I call them wise words I collect. It's not necessarily my own. But there's one that says, you find a dry on the thin ice. Meaning that a lot of people are bored or tired of what they're doing. And, you have to get out. You have to have something on stake to get this feeling. It's not necessarily something where you put your life, but in your own small universe, you have that. And another thing is I tell friends a lot, the easiest thing in this world is to come up with arguments for not doing what you dream about, excuses for not doing what you dream about. I mean, let's say already now I can see my son. Yeah, but what about my kids? What about your parents? What about your son? What about the toilets? What about the health insurance? What about your retirement program or whatever? But you have a list. You can make the list so long with excuses that you end up being desperate or frightened not to do, so you end up doing nothing. And then there's another one which nobody thinks about. I spend a lot of time on artificial intelligence because I'm curious. The problem is not to get the answer. You can get answered everything. But the problem is to find the right questions. You understand? There's so many opportunities, so many possibilities out there. So what should I ask now? I don't know about you, but I've been in finance, I've been in music, I've been in fast-moving consumer goods, I've been in online. It's not about educating yourself anymore. It's about changing businesses, industries, because every time you break the circles, you get a new network, you get new contacts, you get new relations. You get a selection of people across industries you can call. I would work with my network professionally. Make sure you have a contact base where you can actually describe who your important network are. I don't have that because But find out how to ask the right questions or as many questions as possible.
Yeah, I love that. I love to use ChatGPT. For almost a full year, I've really found the benefit of it. But I think your point is about it can give you any information you want, but you have to type in the right prompt. And the right prompt is asking the right question. If you ask the wrong question, you're not going to get the right information. And it's just the same thing in life.
Months ago, I used ChatGPT or some of the other ones as well. I said, oh, how are we performing compared to the market? In other words, how are occupancy rates since after COVID for hotels in Brisbane and in all Portugal? And then I had my Excel, I uploaded it, and I got an Excel. I put it in a graph just so I can see how it was. It took me less than a minute. Oh, I hadn't known about Excel. I hadn't known about all these things. I wouldn't be able to ask questions.
Right. Yeah. So how do you feel about the platform? I want to talk a little bit about some of the information I saw on Booking.com. How do you like Booking.com?
Listen, if it has been on any other industry in the world where you have an intruder coming from Holland taking out 20% of the pharmacy industry or the entertainment industry or the other, it would be an issue. Has slowly, in the last 10 years, they have taken 15-20% of the hospitality industry all over the world, a Dutch company, and send probably the money to Bahamas or somewhere else. I think it's a problem with the money they take out. That's one thing. But saying that, we use them tactically because I have to admit, when I go to a new place, I go to Booking. If you're not on Booking.com, you do not exist. In Kathmandu, we was not on Booking.com. It didn't exist in Kathmandu. They were at corners like we did in the old days and book a room, and they paid when they arrived.
Yeah.
So we continued doing that here. And then we have 1 or 2 rooms on Booking.com. And then we found out that, like we do when we go to another country and not destination, we scan the market on Booking.com and then we call the hotels and book directly. Still, we have a lot of people that book, who admits that it's the right way to do it, but they still book through Booking.com. And when we ask them why, they say it's because it's so easy. It's like convenient. And in any other industries, convenience is something you pay for. So we add 25% to our prices in Booking.com. Yeah. They more than we need to pay for it.
Yeah.
So I think that it doesn't destroy our economy, and they are good at last minute bookings. If we have in a small hotel, when we have 17 rooms only, we have 1 day. You have 1 room, 1 day in a week. It's really hard to sell online, so you can sell them through Booking.com. You use them tactically, and we can use by our mobile phone.
I was impressed by the ratings on Booking.com for you. So I just want to go over those quickly. Yeah. So Booking has, I think they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 categories. I think that they ask for like you as a guest to rate. On a scale of 1 to 10, your staff is a 9.6. Your comfort level of the hotel is a 9. Free Wi-Fi, you must have really fast Wi-Fi. It's a 9.2. Facilities, 8.7. Value for money, 8.8. Cleanliness, 9.2, and location, which is Grassa, which is a 9.1. So exceptional.
Say something about Booking.com. Listen, when I go to the toilet at the airport, I have to say whether I like my piss or not. But if I go to any services, if I talk with my web provider, I have to say if the consultant did a good job or not. I think people are fed up reviewing everything. And Booking.com, you can't get out of Booking.com unless you review. You understand?
Yeah.
Or motivation is negative for some people. So that's why it impresses me.
There's 1,178 reviews. So almost 1,200 people have reviewed, and you have exceptional reviews. So congratulations. And there's a few people wrote reviews, and I wanted to try to read a few of those since you might not have seen them. And one of them is funny in a good way, funny in like a Lisbon way. So one of them is the courtyard was a beautiful spot to unwind with a glass of wine. The common room was also very inviting and friendly. The breakfast was served fresh and was delicious. I wish I would have stayed for a few more days. And then we'll skip to this one. It's a wonderful staff, super friendly and helpful, great breakfast, great vibe. Location is awesome since the best view of Lisbon is 50 feet away. It is all downhill to the good things in town. Sadly, it is all uphill at the end of the day, but it's good for your health.
We try to tell people up because if they come after midday, they have the sun on the back and it's virtually deadly.
Yeah, if anybody listening to this hasn't been to Lisbon before, it's a very, very hilly city. So, yeah. But Thomas, before we wrap up, any last questions, comments for me or our listeners?
I just have one thing. Talking like this, we are very, very, very focused and strategic on. Nothing we do is done coincident. Everything has hours of strategic work. And we have done session with our colleagues in the strategic community in Denmark. Everything from our this plan to our financial, we have on board. Each member represents some of our interests. So everything, there's nothing left to coincidences, or how you say. So we are very, very strategically focused in all we do, even the music, and we will play only albums we know, because everything we can do, there's some strategic thinking behind. Yeah, I'm curious to hear about you.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any questions for me? What do you want to know?
I told you when you first time I saw this with the belly dancer. What is your interest in these things? I love it. Don't get me wrong. Usually I don't do this, but I just, this is so strange.
So I worked with an executive coach. Like in my corporate career, I hired an executive coach to help me accelerate my career. And one of the lessons I learned from him, which would be part of my advice to my younger self, is that you get opportunities by talking to people, right? And then in talking to people, you expand your network, you expand your perspective, and you learn things along the way. So one of the things that I've learned that I tell everybody is if you want to do a new thing, go find the person that's doing that thing and have a conversation with them. And a lot of people are reluctant to have those conversations because they feel like it's burdensome, which it's not burdensome for a lot of people to like share their journey and sort of go back in their memory bank and recall how they got from where they were at to where they're at now. And so I love to have conversations like this because one, I'm bad at small talk, but it helps inform me, and that I think everybody has a story to share and tell. So if I didn't have a podcast, I would want to talk to you anyways. And then so the thought sort of just struck me that if I'm going to try to broaden my own horizons by, reaching out to Thomas, who runs a hotel in Lisbon, I can help inform other people who might be reluctant to, be assertive and reach out and try to talk to strangers. So that's how this sort of came to be.
And people are surprised to know how willing people are when you reach out to them. People is the barrier to just ask for help. And every time you do that, you'll be surprised how open people are, friendly, and how willing they are. If they can help, they do it.
Yeah. From the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, the author Dale Carnegie makes a point is that people love talking about themselves. I don't think it like in a bad way. Like it's not like people patting themselves on the back, but I think to have like a genuinely curious conversation like this and share your story with me and me share a little bit with you, it's enjoyable for me. And I hope it's enjoyable for you to like, this is what I've done in my life. And Randall, I hope that it informs you and maybe a listener or two picks up on this as well. And, I just published a new episode last week, and I published a short clip from that episode on Instagram earlier. And then one of my friends watched the clip, and in the clip, the guest was saying what her most influential book was. And I forget the title of the book, but my buddy watched the clip. He was interested in the book. He's like, I just ordered the book. Like, that's success for me for the podcast. Hopefully now he reads that, and then that helps him accomplish something that he wanted to accomplish. And if I played a small part in that, that's all I want.
One of my old favorite bands from the 90s is a British band called Terrorvision, Britpop. My favorite album by them is How to Make Friends and Influence People.
I didn't know that was I'll have to check that out.
It's an amazing album. I send it to you.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. So, Thomas Tings, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you going to overtime and making this a longer of an episode to quench my curiosity. But I appreciate the journey you've shared with us today. I appreciate your motivation for doing what you're doing. And I wish you nothing but future success with your platform, the hotel and the restaurant. And hopefully, we'll be able to grab a drink someday together in Lisbon.
See you around.
See you around.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And that's it for today's conversation here on the Randall Osché Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that you've enjoyed listening as much as we've enjoyed recording it. Many, many thanks to our guests today for sharing their knowledge, their experience, and their life lessons. If you found today's conversation insightful, interesting, inspiring, please join our growing community by subscribing to the Randall Osché Podcast on your favorite podcast platform and never ever miss another episode. We'd love to hear your feedback, so keep the community alive by sharing your takeaways from today's episode and use the hashtag Randall Osché Podcast. Your feedback and interaction fuels our continued efforts to build a safe space for meaningful, long-form conversations. So thank you so much for the support. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep the conversation going.